For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh. Revi. On the gist today, we're looking at Sri Lanka's economic crisis. Joining us direct from Colombo is BharatShakti and StratNews Global's founder and editor-in-chief, Nitin Gokhale. Hi, Nitin.
Hi, Amitabh. It's good to join you from Colombo, which at the moment is very hot in terms of a crisis facing the entire nation. But it's something that we have to report. It's very painful to see what's happening here.
Right. I mean, you're talking about how hot it is. You just met President Gotabaya, Rajapaksa also, and tell us what the situation is, because we've been reading about it for a long time. But as you're pointing out now, our USP reporting and analyzing from the ground.
Right. In fact, yes, I had a 20-minute long meeting with the president, who is certainly beleaguered and on the back foot. He is battling an unprecedented economic crisis brought about by multiple factors. Not the least among them is the long-term debt that has been accumulated by various governments starting from the beginning of the century. And then the double whammy or triple whammy of COVID-19 for the past 2 years, which has meant that tourism, which is its main source of income in terms of nearly 12% of the GDP of Sri Lanka, comes from tourism. That was badly hit. There was also the crisis brought about by untimely tax cuts, which President Gotabaya Rajapaksa wanted to do to spur consumption and growth. But it was badly timed, and that has also added to the entire situation. So the country is facing unprecedented economic crisis. It's like a perfect storm, as we are saying. Because food prices have risen by nearly 20-25%, fuel prices have gone skyrocketing, and there is no foreign exchange reserve for more than a month of supplies that the country needs to bring in from outside. That's the current situation, Amitabh.
Right. I mean, we've been reading about this, but now that you're there in Colombo, what's it like in terms of people queuing for goods or petrol or fuel?
Oh well, it's all over the place. In fact, the main concern now is how will people survive, because there are nearly 7.5 hours, 8-hour power cuts. There are long queues for petrol and diesel, and cooking gas is scarce. It is not easily available. Plus, food prices have gone up, as I said. So it has hit the middle class and the lower middle class most, and the daily wage earners. And the streets, there's a gloom and doom actually in Colombo, at least where I am. But all over the country, this sense of doom is prevailing. Tourism is just about picking up. And again, it was bad luck for Sri Lanka that the Russia and Ukraine war broke out, because majority, or at least a substantial portion of the tourists who come in to Sri Lanka used to be from Russia and Ukraine and Belarus. Now those people are not coming. So again, foreign exchange earning has dipped, hasn't kept pace with what it used to be in earlier days.
A friend in need. India has been providing a lot of assistance. The finance minister, Sri Lanka's finance minister, has been here, 3 times in the last couple of months.
Oh, indeed. India has stepped up its efforts to help Sri Lanka. It's one of its closest neighbors. The relationship, as you know, has been up and down for various reasons for the past 20 years. And in the past couple of years, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, as president, was trying to restore the relationship. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, not enough exchanges took place between the leadership. Although India has stepped up, as I said, has given nearly $2.3 billion worth of help, $2.3 billion worth of help through various means. There is a short-term or soft loan. There is $500 million in that 2.3 million to buy diesel and oil, petroleum products. There is another 500 million given for buying essential food items or importing them. And there is now demand from Sri Lanka for one more tranche of say 1 billion or 1.2 billion dollars to tide over the current crisis. But this crisis is not going to end like this. And what the president told me was his major worry today is that the international sovereign bonds, which this country has given, has in the financial markets, they are up for repayment nearly $1.5 billion in the next couple of months. Now, as you know, the sovereign bonds are not with the financial institutions, but they are with private equities, private financial institutions, banks, and they are calling in the debt now. So that is a major worry. Of course, Sri Lanka has now decided to go to the IMF for debt restructuring and also get a bailout package from the World Bank and the IMF. But that will still take time, 2-3 months. This 2-3 months or 4 months are going to be very crucial and very painful for Sri Lanka.
And President Rajapaksa did mention, as your tweet says, that India is ready to provide more assistance if needed in the near future.
Oh yes, India, I think, will have to step in through various means. Maybe it will postpone the payments or repayments that India has due coming from Sri Lanka. That may happen. India may even send diesel and petrol. But as you know, even India is import dependent on petroleum products. And given what is happening in the war and the prices going up, it's going to be a very difficult situation. And bilateral loans don't work. The president was telling me it has to be an IMF bailout package. He was trying to avoid it. Earlier governments have tried to avoid it. But because of those decisions, and I want to point out to you, Amitabh, and to our viewers, that Sri Lanka's governments have been profligate over the years. Even if you take just last 15, 16 years, the public debt of Sri Lanka was nearly 90%, 91% of the GDP in 2006. Then from 2010, when 1 year after the war ended in 2009, till about 2014-15, the economy boomed. So the GDP grew from 2006 figures of about $34 billion to go to about $79 billion in those years. So consequently, the debt, public debt, which includes the sovereign bonds as well as the foreign exchange payments that had to be done, that came down to about 71%. But post 2019, again it rose to about 94%, and in 2021, the public debt has gone up to 119% of the GDP, which no country can sustain. And that is because governments have taken loans indiscriminately without thinking of the consequences and the repayments that will become due over the years. So that was already an accumulated debt, coupled with COVID-19, some wrong decisions in cutting back taxes like VAT, the value-added tax, and other taxes, which President Gotabaya Rajapaksa did as soon as he took over in November 2019. All that has now come to bite Sri Lanka severely. And that is the worry, that it should not default on these sovereign payments. So IMF seems to be the only saving grace, or maybe only bailout package will save Sri Lanka from its current crisis.
As you said, the president mentioned that bilateral loans and swaps don't really work, and IMF bailout is what will be looked at in the near future. But excuse me, but what's the status vis-a-vis China? Because we read a lot about Sri Lanka continuing to take loans from China to pay off old loans.
Yes, in fact, so I was even studying that. So, surprisingly, China and Japan both sort of hold 10% of Sri Lanka's debt. So China has certainly, because it has certain influence over the island nation, it has managed to take away some land in the important infrastructure projects when the payment was not done. And I think the period in the previous government, that is from 2015 to 2019, the public debt increased, the foreign exchange reserves plummeted, and therefore the current government of President Rajapaksa and his brother Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had a very difficult time to recover from what had happened there. Even they were responsible for it between 2006 and 2014, but it was added to it by the previous government. And now China, whatever loans they gave, they are asking it back. But maybe China will also bail them out as India has done. But the other sovereign bonds, as I mentioned, is not easy to repay, and that is the major worry for the government and for the people. They don't understand all this. Common people don't understand all this. They only look at what is happening currently. So they are blaming President Rajapaksa. They are blaming him for his faulty policies of forcing farmers to go in for organic fertilizers rather than chemical fertilizers. That also affected the output of the crop in Sri Lanka in the past 2 years. And as I said, tourism has completely become almost non-existent as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, double, triple value for this country, which depends so much on its natural beauty and the tourists who come in to enjoy themselves.
A lot to be done to get Sri Lanka's economy back on track, like that train that just passed by you, Nitin. But a lot happening in Colombo currently. BIMSTEC happened. It's been formalized now. There's a charter, the incremental progress. Any thoughts on what's happening multilaterally?
Oh, yes. In fact, one of the key points that President Rajapaksa had told me, if you remember, in November 2019, when I did his first interview after he became president, he wanted investments from different countries to come into Sri Lanka rather than grants or loans, because that's the only way to spur consumption and growth. But unfortunately, even that hasn't happened because of the COVID. So, but BIMSTEC charter that you mentioned, I think India is going to take over the security aspects of the BIMSTEC cooperation. Sri Lanka will look at climate change, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't really had the time today to look at the charter in detail, but every country has now got the responsibility, particular responsibility. I just happened to see the delegation from Nepal and Bhutan being here. I think the General Secretary of BIMSTEC is also here. He's a Bhutanese official. And I think BIMSTEC is now gathering traction. BIMSTEC, as you know, is supported wholeheartedly by India, primarily because India sees this as SARC minus Pakistan. And of course, SARC is dead and not active at all. So BIMSTEC is the key for development of the region, which is of course Bay of Bengal initiative on technical and economic initiative, which can consist of countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and India, of course. So BIMSTEC is certainly the talk of the town in the official circles right now. But for the common people here, all that doesn't matter. All that they need is they must go back to at least what economic condition that they had in, say, beginning of 2019, if not earlier.
Right. And when you're talking about that, what is the political situation? The External Affairs Minister has met many of the opposition leaders as well, but is there a lot of pressure on the government because of what's happening?
Oh, indeed, there is already protests being led by the opposition, led by Sajid Premadasa, one of the more prominent opposition leaders. I think the media and the think tanks and the intellectuals have also attacked the government for its mishandling of the economy. And of course, there is this Tamil question. But President Rajapaksa just met a Tamil delegation for the first time in 2 years, where there is a package that is being now talked about for development of Tamil areas. India is also concentrating on developing connectivity. India is giving Sri Lanka aid on various other issues like security, on issues like the Indian Ocean security under that conclave, uh, Colombo security conclave that has come up between India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Seychelles right now. A lot of regional activity certainly, but ultimately economy has to become normal, or it has come back to its stable situation to do all this. The government is keen. The government intentions are not in doubt at all. But what steps it will have to take? It may have to raise taxes heavily. It will have to cut subsidies. It may have to, even like Air India was sold by the government to a private party, may have to sell the Sri Lanka airline, which also is one of the biggest drains on the exchequer, the government exchequer. All these steps, I think, will have to be taken if Sri Lanka has to recover from the current crisis.
Petrol above 300 rupees a liter. I mean, it's really hurting them. But since you, excuse me, you mentioned security, BIMSTEC, India's taking the lead. Each of the 7 countries has a priority region. But you mentioned the Colombo Security Conclave with the NSA level talks that happened in Maldives. How important is that, and how does Sri Lanka view that?
Well, Sri Lanka is the key driver of that initiative. It is part of the security that they want in the maritime domain. And the Secretariat, remember, of the Colombo Security Conclave is located in Colombo. The idea here is to exchange information, intelligence, and prevent. There are also about 6 to 7 pillars to that. The last summit meeting between the NSAs, if you can call it that, happened in Male, in fact, not too long ago. So there they've come up with, I think, key priority areas where illegal fishing, smuggling, drug trafficking, human trafficking, climate change, and of course, intelligence sharing about terrorist activities. All that consists of whatever is happening under that security initiative. But there is always, room for improvement. And India is actually helping the Sri Lankan Air Force and the Navy. India has just decided to transfer 3 Dornier aircraft to the Sri Lankan Air Force. There is also a maritime coordination center that is coming up in Colombo with India's help. Bharat Electronics Limited is going to do something for that to link up various sub centers for exchange of information, either for intelligence or for HADR operations.
So, Nitin, if you just want to wrap up your thoughts on the current situation and the way out.
Well, the current situation, as I mentioned, is most difficult. There is no easy way out for Sri Lanka's government. And what symbolizes its profligacy, all the different governments and their thoughtless actions of taking indiscriminate loans and projects, awarding projects to countries like China, and sort of getting into this so-called debt trap is something I do not know whether you can see behind me. Those cranes that you see is the Colombo Port City project, which the Chinese are handling, which is the symbol of the profligacy and the ease with which China has been able to penetrate in this country. But now there is, of course, a rethink, and I think over the next 6 months or so, Sri Lanka will have to go through a very hard time, and that's unfortunate. With such a lovely country, such warm people, they are going through a time which they have not seen in their lifetime. Even during the war, which I covered between 2006 and 2009, such shortages, such power cuts were not seen. And that's unprecedented, and that's very unfortunate. Amitabh?
Nitin Gokhale, reporting and analyzing the situation direct for all our viewers there in Colombo. We'll keep coming back to you for more on that. Thanks so much, Nitin.
Thank you. Thanks, Amitabh.
And to our viewers, do send us feedback on this particular episode and any of our other episodes. Do engage with us on YouTube by putting up your comments and suggestions, and do like this video and share the link with your personal and professional contacts. This is The Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.